Hello, this is Kenneth Wong, a Burmese American writer and Burmese language instructor. Welcome to a new episode of Bite Size Burmese, where I discuss things that are not usually found in a standard textbook. In English, when you're talking about yourself, your choice of pronoun is a single solitary I, but not so in Burmese. There is a variety of ways to refer to yourself based on your gender, profession, age, and even your relationship towards the person you are speaking to. And the same is true for ways to refer to the other person, the one you are speaking to. You can refer to them by name, by a kinship term, or by an honorific associated with their profession. In fact, there are situations where using what is technically a polite way to say you, which is kamya or shin, could be considered impolite. How many ways can you say you and I in Burmese? That's what we'll discuss in today's episode. If you and I want to avoid misunderstandings in our talk, you'd better stay tuned. Let's start first with the first person pronoun, I. I'm sure you've been taught that if you're a man, you use chano, and if you're a woman, you use chama as polite first person pronouns. But do you know that if you're older than the other person, you could also use a kinship term? That's right. If you're older than the other person, say about 5 years roughly, you could refer to yourself as a go, big brother, or a ma, big sister. By extension, you could also refer to the other person as Ni Le, little brother, or Ni Ma, or Ni Ma Le, little sister, instead of using the textbook prescribed Kamya or Shin to say you. If the age gap is greater, you could refer to yourself as Ule, the word for uncle, and Ador, the word for auntie. In fact, the English words uncle and auntie have become loan words in Burmese. But if you really want to use them, I suggest you use a Burmese-centric pronunciation to sound more Burmese. Instead of pronouncing uncle, say anke, and instead of auntie, say auntie. If I want to say, when I was a college student, I frequently had lunch at the school canteen. The standard approach to say that is, "Chano college chaunda bawadonga." Chown canteen ma kana kana nileza sare. One more time, I'm going to emphasize the pronoun usage here. Chano college chaunda bawadonga. Chown canteen ma kana kana nileza sare. But if I choose to use the word uncle or anke as my pronoun, I would say anke koli chaunda bawadonga chaun kentima kanakana nileza sade. Now this literally translates to when uncle was a college student, uncle tends to have lunch at the school canteen regularly. In English, it would sound highly pretentious and unnatural to talk about yourself in third person like this, but in Burmese, believe it or not, that makes you sound more Burmese and more natural. If the other person is young enough to be your son or daughter, you could refer to them as Tha for son or Thami for daughter. This is quite common, especially among teachers, by the way. Burmese teachers tend to behave rather parental towards the kids in their classroom because traditionally they are responsible for the well-being of the students. Normally, the standard way to ask, "Where did you come from?" is "Kamyaru bega lale" or "Shindu bega lale," depending on gender. But a teacher might ask, "Tharu thamiru bega lale." Tharu thamiru bega lale. Quite literally, where do sons and daughters come from? So if you're a new Burmese learner, not yet used to natural Burmese dialogue, you might overhear this and you might be looking around for the sons and daughters of your teacher and you are getting confused. He is, in fact, referring to you and your friends as sons and daughters. By the same token, if you are still quite young and you are speaking to someone much older, let's say of the same age range as your parents, you could refer to yourself as Tha, son, or Thami, daughter. So if you'd like to use this approach to respond to the question about where you came from earlier, you might say Tharu coffee zainga lade, or thamido, coffee zainga lade, to say, we just came back from a cafe. Now you can probably see that if you happen to overhear a conversation between an older person and a young Burmese girl, it could actually seem like they are gossiping about a mysterious uncle and a daughter, and you're looking around and nobody else is there. That means they are talking to each other. They just happen to be using kinship terms as substitute pronouns for you and I. After getting used to talking about yourself as uncle or anke in Burmese and auntie or auntie in Burmese with younger folks, you might be thinking, this boy is young enough to be my son, so I'm just going to refer to myself as a pay, dad, or a may, mom. Now, I'd caution you against that. Unless you and the other person have established a truly parent-child-like relationship, the terms dad and mom, a pay and a may, however, are just too intimate to be used liberally as substitute pronouns. The word go means body, your physical body, but it also means oneself, myself. So, back to how I might say, when I was a college student, if I want to use go as a substitute first person pronoun, it would be go college da bawadunga. One more time, go college da bawadunga, to say, when I was a college student. I could also use the hypothetical we by using the plural form of the word for body as goro, goro, as a substitute pronoun for we. So I might say, goro college bawadonga. That means when we were in college. Another method that you can use, you could refer to the other person by name. When necessary, make sure you add the proper age appropriate prefixes like go, mao, ma, do. If you're speaking to a young girl named Momo, you could ask her, hey, where did you come from? By asking, Ma Momo bega lale? Ma Momo bega lale? Literally, you're asking, where did Miss Momo come from? And if Momo is Burmese, she wouldn't think it is strange at all. So if you could refer to somebody else by name when speaking directly to them, can you also refer to yourself by your name? In my experience, and that is the experience of someone who was born and raised in the heart of downtown Yangon in the 80s and the 90s, only very young boys and girls would do it. There is a certain cuteness to it when a teenage girl says, Momo kalibawadonga, to say, when I was a child. Quite literally, she is saying, when Momo was a child, even though she is referring to herself. Now, precisely because there is a cuteness associated with this kind of speaking, if you're 30, 35, pushing 40, maybe you don't want to do that because there is a certain childlikeness to it. Teachers, instructors, and recognized masters of certain disciplines, for example, a virtuoso pianist or a professional artist, could refer to themselves as saya or teacher when talking about themselves. Since I'm a teacher, if I'm telling a story to my students about my college days, I could start with saya kolik jangda bawadonga. Saya kolik jangda bawadonga, to say when I was a college student. When speaking to older people and social superiors, in fact, I would discourage you from using the pronouns kamya or shin to refer to them as you. In many situations, it could come across as accusatory or confrontational. If I'm a junior staff member at a company or a political party, and I'm speaking to the president of the company or a minister about his college days, I wouldn't dream of starting with Kamya Kolik Jaunda Bawadonga or Shen Kolik Jaunda Bawadonga. Instead, I would use his title, for example, Okataji for president or chairman, or Wunjimin for minister as substitute pronoun, and say instead, Okataji Kolik Jaunda Bawadonga or Wunjimin Kolik Jaunda Bawadonga. This is the Burmese equivalent of saying, when you, Mr. President, was in college or when Your Excellency was in college as a respectful form of address. Pronoun choices in Burmese language is a complicated topic. It's going to take experience and a lot of exposure to natural dialogues to understand how Burmese people tend to use these pronouns. If you have questions, leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to address them. And the next time you speak to a Burmese person, choose your pronouns carefully or you and I might have a problem.